Good morning, community, or evening, depending on when you're watching this. My name is Sias. I'm the StuCo director over at our Plainfield location, and I'm so excited that I get to share the community daily with you today on May 25th. I would love to just read it and then share some of my thoughts, as this is one of my favorite passages that we find throughout the Bible. It comes from Ephesians chapter 4. This is the Apostle Paul writing this. Here's what he says. He goes, "I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to the one hope that belonged to your call. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all." What I love about this passage is just that phrase, one another, and how it calls us here to bear one another in love. This is one of the most used passages that we see from Paul throughout the Bible, used over 100 times in the New Testament alone. And here it's talking about bearing one another. A lot of times it's exhort one another, care for one another, lift up one another. But here it's interesting because it's talking about bearing, this idea of caring for and dealing with people even when I don't want to, even when maybe you don't want to. And it's not just doing it begrudgingly because, oh, this is what God calls me to do, but it's saying to do so in love. The same love that Jesus modeled for us, that modeled to many people who he either didn't agree with or found himself not seeing eye to eye with. God still loved and cared for them and was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice of dying on a cross for them. He says, even at the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I think that's one of the greatest example we have ever seen on the earth, that Christ continued to bear one another, to bear our sins in one of the most excruciating, hardest moments any human could ever experience. And he did so in love. I want this to be a reminder for me on a regular basis to constantly think back to that moment at the cross and the way that Jesus prayed for other people in the midst of his tragedy and in one of the most suffering moments and darkest moments of all time. Christ still cared and loved for us. It really puts in perspective then my moments where I don't see eye to eye with a fellow coworker or somebody else who I find and meet inside the church or even outside of it. Not that we don't speak up for truth and be able to share what is true, but that we would be able to love other people, to know what hills to not just die on, but what hills can we truly love on, so they may know that we are Christians by our love.